The storm was gone. The rivers had calmed. The forests had begun to heal. But the echoes of that ancient storm continued to shape the destiny of humanity for countless generations. The survivors grew old. Their children became parents. Their grandchildren became the guardians of a new world. Every generation inherited more than stone tools or hunting skills. They inherited courage. They inherited wisdom. They inherited the belief that no matter how difficult life became, giving up was never an option. As centuries passed, humanity spread farther across the ancient world. Small tribes crossed endless grasslands. Others followed rivers into unknown valleys. Some climbed towering mountains, while others walked along distant coastlines where the waves crashed against the shore. Every journey carried risk. Every journey also carried hope. With every step, humans learned something new. They discovered better ways to build shelters. They crafted stronger stone blades. They learned which plants could heal wounds and which animals were too dangerous to hunt. Knowledge became the greatest weapon ever created. Unlike a spear, knowledge never broke. Unlike fire, it could never be washed away by rain. It could be shared endlessly from one generation to the next. And so, humanity continued to evolve, not just in body, but in mind, the ability to observe, to remember, to teach, and to imagine. These gifts transformed frightened prehistoric survivors into the ancestors of every civilization that would one day rise across the earth. Millions of years later, archaeologists carefully uncover ancient footprints preserved in hardened mud. Scientists study stone tools buried beneath layers of rock. Researchers examine fossils, searching for clues about the lives of our earliest ancestors. Each discovery tells the same remarkable story. Our ancestors were never perfect. They made mistakes. They faced impossible challenges. They lost loved ones. Imagine a world millions of years ago, a world without cities, roads, electricity, or modern technology. The earth was wild, untamed, and unforgiving. Endless African grasslands stretched to the horizon. Dense forests covered the land, and towering mountains stood beneath an open sky. Every sunrise brought a new struggle, and every sunset was a victory for those who survived. For prehistoric humans, life was a constant battle against hunger, dangerous predators, and the unpredictable forces of nature. But among all these threats, there was one enemy that inspired more fear than any animal: a massive ancient storm. These storms arrived without warning. Dark clouds swallowed the sky. Powerful winds ripped through the forests. Lightning struck giant trees, and relentless rain transformed peaceful rivers into deadly floods. Within a few hours, an entire landscape could be changed forever. Deep within this ancient wilderness lived a small tribe of early humans. They had no metal tools, no permanent homes, and no knowledge of weather forecasts. Their survival depended on simple stone weapons, teamwork, and generations of experience passed from one family to another. As the sun rose over the savanna, the tribe began another ordinary day. Hunters sharpened their stone spears before setting out in search of food. Women gathered edible roots, berries, and medicinal plants. Children stayed close to the elders, learning the skills they would one day need to survive in this harsh world. Everything seemed peaceful, but nature was already sending warning signs. A flock of birds suddenly burst into the sky, flying away from the forest. Herds of antelope began running without stopping. Even the mighty mammoths changed direction, moving toward higher ground. The oldest members of the tribe noticed these unusual behaviors immediately. They had seen these signs before. Something terrible was coming. The wind slowly began to rise. Leaves spun through the air, and tree branches CRE. The first drops of rain were enormous. They slammed against the leaves and rocks with incredible force, and within moments, the quiet wilderness erupted into chaos. The sky turned almost completely black, hiding the sun behind layers of swirling storm clouds. Lightning flashed across the horizon every few seconds, followed by thunder so powerful that it shook the ground beneath the tribe's feet. The prehistoric humans struggled to move forward. The fierce wind pushed against them with such strength that even standing upright became difficult. Mothers held their children tightly, while the hunters formed a protective circle around the group. Every step toward the rocky hills felt like a battle against nature itself. Then the rain became relentless. Water poured from the sky in sheets, soaking everyone within seconds. Dry paths disappeared beneath rushing streams of muddy water. Small creeks transformed into raging rivers, carrying broken branches, stones, and uprooted trees downstream. Suddenly, a loud cracking sound echoed through the forest. One of the oldest trees in the valley snapped apart. Its enormous trunk crashed to the ground, shaking the earth and narrowly missing several members of the tribe. Everyone froze for a moment before running even faster. They knew the forest itself had become a deadly trap. The chief searched desperately for higher ground. His experience told him that staying in a valley would almost certainly mean death. Floodwaters always rushed toward the lowest places, swallowing everything in their path. As they climbed the slippery hillside, another danger appeared. A frightened herd of giant prehistoric animals came charging through the storm. Massive wild cattle, antelope, and ancient horses raced across the landscape, desperate to escape the rising flood. The humans quickly moved behind large rocks, allowing the terrified animals to thunder past. One wrong step could have resulted in being crushed beneath hundreds of pounding. Night fell quickly over the ancient wilderness. The storm showed no sign of stopping. Thick black clouds covered the sky, hiding the moon and every star. The only light came from flashes of lightning that briefly revealed the terrifying landscape before darkness swallowed it again. The tribe had finally reached a narrow rocky ledge high above the flooded valley. It offered some protection from the powerful wind, but it was far from safe. Cold rain continued to pour over the exhausted survivors. Their clothes, made from animal skins, were completely soaked, and the freezing wind drained the warmth from their bodies. The children began to shiver uncontrollably. The elders gathered everyone close together, knowing that body heat could mean the difference between life and death. The adults formed a circle around the youngest members of the tribe, shielding them from the wind with their own bodies. But another problem soon appeared. Their fire was gone. The burning branches they had carried from the camp had been extinguished by the endless rain. Without fire, there would be no warmth, no cooked food, and no protection from the predators that ruled the darkness. The chief understood the danger immediately. He selected 3 of the strongest hunters and silently pointed toward a nearby cave that could barely be seen during flashes of lightning. If they could reach it, the cave might provide shelter until the storm passed. The journey was extremely dangerous. Every rock was slippery, and every step could send them tumbling into the raging flood below. The hunters moved slowly, using wooden spears to test the ground before taking another step. Then, a deep, terrifying roar echoed through the valley. Everyone froze. Another roar followed, closer this time. The lightning flashed again, revealing 2 glowing eyes staring from the darkness. A giant saber-toothed cat had been watching them. Driven by hunger, the powerful predator had followed the tribe through. As the first rays of sunlight slowly broke through the clouds, an eerie silence spread across the ancient wilderness. The deafening thunder had finally faded, and the relentless rain had come to an end. For the first time in many hours, the tribe stepped outside the cave. What they saw was beyond anything they had ever imagined. The beautiful valley where they had lived for countless seasons had completely disappeared. Massive floodwaters had carved new rivers through the land. Ancient trees that had stood for hundreds of years now lay scattered across the ground like broken sticks. Huge boulders had rolled down from the mountains, crushing everything in their path. Their home was gone. The small shelters they had built with endless days of hard work had vanished without a trace. Their food stores, stone tools, animal skins, and precious belongings had all been swept away by the flood. For a few moments, no one spoke. The children looked at the destruction with frightened eyes, while the elders silently remembered the home they had lost. Even the strongest hunters lowered their heads, realizing they would have to begin their lives all over again. But survival allowed no time for sorrow. The chief gathered everyone together and divided the tribe into small groups. One team would search for clean drinking water. Another would look for edible plants and fruits that had survived the storm. The hunters would track animals that had escaped the flood, while the elders stayed behind to protect the children. The search was difficult. Many familiar paths had disappeared beneath thick layers of mud. Fallen trees blocked the forest, and new streams cut across the land. Every step revealed another reminder of nature's incredible power. As the hunters moved deeper into the forest, they noticed fresh footprints in the wet soil. They were not human. Large predators had also survived the storm and were now searching for food. The disaster had made every creature desperate. A new day marked the beginning of a new life. The ancient storm had destroyed the tribe's home, scattered their belongings, and tested their courage in ways they had never imagined. Yet despite the loss, every member of the tribe had survived. That alone was a victory. Without wasting time, the people began rebuilding. The hunters cut strong branches from fallen trees, while others collected large stones to form the foundation of new shelters. Women gathered dry grass and broad leaves to create roofs that could better withstand future storms. The children carried small sticks and helped collect food, proudly contributing to the survival of the entire community. This was more than rebuilding a camp. It was the birth of a stronger tribe. The chief knew that nature could never be controlled, but it could be understood. He gathered the younger members around him and pointed toward the distant mountains, the flowing river, and the open sky. He showed them the warning signs they must never ignore again. The sudden silence of birds, the restless movement of animals, the dark clouds rolling across the horizon, and the powerful winds that always arrived before the storm. These lessons became priceless knowledge. Generation after generation, they would be passed from parents to children, helping future humans prepare for dangers long before they arrived. Days turned into weeks. The forest slowly began to recover. Fresh green, leaves appeared on broken trees. Birds returned to their nests. Herds of grazing animals once again crossed the open plains, and the rivers settled into a calm, steady flow. Nature had shown its destructive power, but it also revealed its incredible ability to heal. The tribe adapted as well. They built stronger shelters against rocky cliffs instead of in low valleys. They stored food on higher ground, safely away from floodwaters. They always kept extra firewood protected inside caves, knowing that fire could save lives during cold nights. The great storm was over, but its impact would never disappear. Long after the skies had cleared and the rivers returned to their normal course, the prehistoric tribe continued to remember every terrifying moment. Around the evening campfire, the elders retold the story again and again, not to spread fear, but to teach survival. The children listened carefully. They learned that nature always gives warnings to those who know how to observe. Birds often leave the forest before storm arrives. Herds of animals instinctively move toward higher ground. The wind changes direction. The air becomes heavy. Dark clouds gather with unusual speed. These observations became some of humanity's earliest survival lessons. As months passed, the tribe became stronger than ever before. Their new shelters were built on higher ground, protected by rocky cliffs and thick forests. Food was stored safely inside caves instead of low-lying camps. Firewood was collected during dry weather and kept covered for emergencies. Every mistake had become a lesson. Every lesson increased their chances of survival. The younger hunters also improved their skills. They learned to hunt as a team instead of alone. They communicated with simple hand signals, surrounded dangerous prey more effectively, and protected one another during every expedition. The women expanded their knowledge of edible plants and medicinal herbs. They discovered which leaves could treat wounds, which roots could reduce fever, and which berries were safe to eat after heavy rains. Slowly, knowledge became as valuable as strength. Years passed. Children who had survived the Great Storm grew into skilled adults. They shared the same lessons with their own children, creating a chain of knowledge that stretched across countless generations. This was the beginning of something extraordinary. Human survival was no longer based only on physical power. It was based on memory, on experience, on cooperation, on the ability. Years passed after the Great Storm, and the land slowly transformed into a place full of new opportunities. The once devastated valley was now covered with fresh green grass, young trees, and flowing streams. Nature had rebuilt itself, and the prehistoric tribe had done the same. The children who had survived the storm were no longer children. They had grown into skilled hunters, fearless explorers, and caring parents. The terrifying memories of the disaster had shaped them into stronger leaders, determined to protect the next generation from the dangers they had once faced. Every sunrise marked the beginning of another adventure. Small hunting groups traveled farther than ever before, exploring forests beyond the distant hills. They discovered hidden caves, crystal-clear springs, and rich hunting grounds filled with giant deer, wild horses, and ancient bison. Each journey expanded their understanding of the world. They learned to read the movement of clouds, recognize the calls of birds, and follow the tracks of animals across muddy ground. Nature had become their greatest teacher. One afternoon, while searching for food, a group of young hunters climbed a high mountain ridge. From the top, they witnessed a breathtaking sight. Beyond the endless plains lay another vast valley, untouched by human footsteps. Thick forests stretched toward the horizon, rivers shimmered in the sunlight, and countless herds of animals grazed peacefully below. It was a land full of promise. The discovery sparked excitement throughout the tribe. The elders gathered around the evening fire to discuss what they had seen. Some believed they should remain where they were, safe in the home they had rebuilt. Others believed that exploring new lands was essential for survival. After hours of discussion, the chief made his decision. At the next sunrise, a small group of brave volunteers would leave the valley to explore the unknown. It would be the tribe's greatest journey yet. B. The morning sun cast a golden glow across the endless prehistoric plains as the small group of explorers continued their journey into lands no member of their tribe had ever seen before. Behind them, their home disappeared beyond the distant hills. Ahead of them, only the unknown. Every step carried both hope and danger. The explorers walked carefully, following the course of a narrow river that wound through the valley. Fresh animal tracks covered the muddy ground. Some belonged to giant deer and wild horses, while others were far more terrifying. Massive footprints. The prints were deeper than any they had ever seen. The oldest hunter knelt beside them, placing his hand inside one of the enormous tracks. It was almost twice the size of his own foot. Whatever had passed through this valley, it was enormous. The group remained silent and continued forward with extreme caution. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, they reached a breathtaking landscape unlike anything they had imagined. Towering cliffs surrounded a vast green valley filled with crystal-clear lakes, waterfalls, and forests untouched by human hands. Animals were everywhere. Herds of giant bison grazed peacefully across the grasslands. Ancient elephants moved slowly through the trees. Colorful birds filled the skies while monkeys leaped from branch to branch. It looked like paradise, but appearances could be deceiving. Suddenly, every bird in the valley took flight at once. The peaceful silence vanished. The hunters immediately stopped. They remembered the lesson passed down from the Great Storm. When nature becomes silent, danger is close. A low growl echoed through the forest. The bushes began to move. Then, from the shadows, emerged one of the largest predators they had ever encountered. A giant saber-toothed cat. Its powerful shoulders rippled beneath its thick fur. Long curved fangs glistened in the sunlight, and its piercing eyes remained locked on the humans. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains, the mysterious column of smoke continued to rise above the forest. The explorers stood in complete silence. None of them had ever seen evidence of another human tribe. Until this moment, they believed their people were alone in the vast prehistoric world. Curiosity battled with fear. After a brief discussion using simple gestures, the chief decided they would investigate, but with extreme caution. At dawn, the hunters quietly moved toward the source of the smoke. Every step was slow. Every sound mattered. The forest was alive with birds, insects, and distant animal calls, yet the explorers remained almost invisible as they carefully made their way through the thick vegetation. Hours later, they reached the edge of a rocky hillside. Below them was an astonishing sight. A small prehistoric tribe had built their shelters beside a clear river. Children played near the water while hunters sharpened stone spears. Women prepared food over a carefully protected fire. They looked different in small ways, but they were unmistakably human. The explorers had made one of the greatest discoveries in human history. They were not alone. The chief knew this meeting could change everything. It could lead to friendship, or it could end in violence. He slowly placed his spear on the ground to show peaceful intentions. One by one, the other hunters did the same. Across the river, the second tribe noticed the strangers. The entire camp became silent. Their hunters quickly formed a line, ready to defend their families if necessary. For several long moments, neither group moved. Only the sound of the flowing river separated them. Then something unexpected happened. A small child from the second tribe stepped forward, carrying a piece of fruit in both hands. Ignoring the frightened voices behind him, he walked to the riverbank and gently placed the fruit on a flat stone before stepping back. It was not a weapon. The meeting between the two tribes marked the beginning of a new chapter. For many days, they lived side by side, watching and learning from one another. Although they spoke different sounds and used different gestures, they soon realized they shared the same hopes, the same fears, and the same dream: to survive. Each tribe possessed knowledge the other had never discovered. One tribe knew how to craft stronger stone blades by striking flint at the perfect angle. The other had mastered fishing with sharpened wooden spears in fast-moving rivers. As they exchanged these skills, life became easier for everyone. Soon, hunting parties grew larger. Instead of 5 or 6 hunters chasing dangerous prey, nearly 20 worked together. They surrounded giant deer, wild horses, and ancient bison with remarkable coordination. Their success meant more food, fewer injuries, and a better chance of surviving the harsh seasons. The children were the quickest to adapt. They played together, copied each other's gestures, and invented simple ways to communicate. Without realizing it, they were creating the earliest forms of shared language. As the seasons changed, the combined tribe built something they had never imagined before. A permanent settlement. Strong wooden shelters stood against rocky cliffs. A central fire burned day and night, protected from rain and wind. Food was stored safely inside dry caves, and watchmen guarded the camp from predators during the night. For the first time, survival was no longer just about escaping danger. It was about planning for the future. One evening, while the entire tribe gathered around the fire, the oldest elder stood and pointed toward the stars shining above the valley. He reminded everyone of the great storm that had nearly destroyed them. Without that disaster, they might never have left their homeland. Without leaving, they would never have discovered new lands. Without exploring, they would never have met another tribe. Years turned into decades. The united tribe continued to grow, and with every passing season, they became more skilled, more organized, and more connected to the land around them. What had once been a small group of frightened survivors had transformed into a thriving prehistoric community. The children born after the Great Storm had never experienced the terror their parents endured. Instead, they inherited something far more valuable: knowledge. Every morning, the elders taught the younger generation how to recognize edible plants, track wild animals, shape stone into sharp tools, and predict changes in the weather by observing the sky, the wind, and the behavior of birds. Knowledge became their greatest treasure. The hunters no longer relied on strength alone. They carefully planned every expedition, Scouts searched for animal tracks before the main hunting party moved in. Others climbed nearby hills to watch for predators. Working together, they achieved what no single person could accomplish alone. As food became more plentiful, the tribe had time to create. Some carved symbols into stone. Others painted colorful images on the walls of caves. They drew mammoths, deer, rivers, storms, hunters, and great fires. These were more than pictures. They were the first stories, the first attempts to preserve memories for future generations. Every drawing carried a lesson. Every symbol told a tale of survival. One evening, a young boy asked the oldest elder a simple question. Why do we tell the story of the great storm every year? The elder smiled as the firelight reflected in his eyes. Because one day, he said, we will all be gone. But if our children remember what happened, they will know how to survive when the next great storm comes. The tribe sat silently around the fire. Above them, thousands of stars filled the night sky. Those same stars had watched over countless generations. Thousands of seasons passed. The children of the great storm became elders. Their children became hunters. New generations were born beneath the same ancient sky, each one carrying the wisdom of those who came before. The world around them never stopped changing. Rivers changed their course. Forests expanded and disappeared. Powerful volcanoes erupted in the distance, covering the land with ash. Long periods of drought were followed by years of endless rain. Yet humanity endured. The tribe had learned that survival did not belong to the strongest or the fastest. It belonged to those who could adapt. As the population grew, some families began leaving the valley in search of new opportunities. Small groups traveled farther than ever before, crossing rivers that no one had dared to cross and climbing mountains that had always seemed impossible to reach. Each journey revealed another piece of the world. Some discovered vast grasslands filled with giant herds of grazing animals. Others entered dense forests where sunlight barely touched the ground. A few reached rocky coastlines, where endless waves crashed against the shore. Every new land brought danger, but it also brought possibility. Along the way, they encountered unfamiliar animals. Massive rhinoceroses, giant crocodiles, enormous eagles, and powerful predators unlike anything they had seen before. Each encounter forced them to invent new ways to survive. They created stronger stone axes, longer wooden spears, better shelters, smarter hunting strategies. Human intelligence was evolving alongside experience. One evening, after returning from a long expedition, a young hunter stood before the tribe. He pointed toward the distant horizon and spoke with excitement. There's always another valley beyond the next mountain. His words inspired the entire tribe. No longer were they satisfied with simply surviving. They wanted to explore, to learn, to discover. This desire would become one. The story of the Great Storm had now become a legend, not because of the destruction it caused, but because of the incredible strength it awakened within humanity. Long before kingdoms were built, before languages were written, and before history was recorded, there were ordinary people fighting extraordinary battles against the forces of nature. They had no castles, no machines, no maps, no technology, yet they possessed something far more powerful, the will to survive. Every scar they carried told story. Every successful hunt proved that determination could overcome fear. Every child who lived to see another sunrise became a symbol of hope for the future. The Great Storm was only one challenge among many. In the years that followed, the tribe would face droughts, wildfires, freezing winters, dangerous predators, and unfamiliar lands. Each hardship made them wiser. Each victory made them stronger. Slowly, humanity became a species that did more than simply survive. It learned. It adapted. It dreamed. Those dreams pushed people beyond the safety of familiar valleys. They crossed mountains. They followed rivers. They explored forests. They searched for new beginnings wherever the horizon called them. That same spirit still exists today. It inspires explorers to reach the deepest oceans. It drives scientists to uncover the secrets of ancient fossils. It encourages astronauts to travel beyond our planet and explore the vastness of space. The journey began millions of years ago with a small tribe refusing to surrender. Their courage became the foundation of human progress. Their unity became the strength of civilization. Their curiosity became the spark of discovery. Perhaps the greatest lesson from the Great Storm is this: no challenge lasts forever. The darkest skies eventually clear. The strongest winds eventually become silent. And after every storm, a new sunrise always appears. That sunrise reminds us that hope is true. The storm was gone. The rivers had calmed. The forests had begun to heal. But the echoes of that ancient storm continued to shape the destiny of humanity for countless generations. The survivors grew old. Their children became parents. Their grandchildren became the guardians of a new world. Every generation inherited more than stone tools or hunting skills. They inherited courage. They inherited wisdom. They inherited the belief that no matter how difficult life became, giving up was never an option. As centuries passed, humanity spread farther across the ancient world. Small tribes crossed endless grasslands. Others followed rivers into unknown valleys. Some climbed towering mountains, while others walked along distant coastlines where the waves crashed against the shore. Every journey carried risk. Every journey also carried hope. With every step, humans learned something new. They discovered better ways to build shelters. They crafted stronger stone blades. They learned which plants could heal wounds and which animals were too dangerous to hunt. Knowledge became the greatest weapon ever created. Unlike a spear, knowledge never broke. Unlike fire, it could never be washed away by rain. It could be shared endlessly from one generation to the next. And so, humanity continued to evolve, not just in body, but in mind. The ability to observe, to remember, to teach, and to imagine. These gifts transformed frightened prehistoric survivors into the ancestors of every civilization that would one day rise across the earth. Millions of years later, archaeologists carefully uncover ancient footprints preserved in hardened mud. Scientists study stone tools buried beneath layers of rock. Researchers examine fossils, searching for clues about the lives of our earliest ancestors. Each discovery tells the same remarkable story. Our ancestors were never perfect. They made mistakes. They faced impossible challenges. They lost loved ones. As the seasons continued to pass, the descendants of the Great Storm gathered around the same tradition that had united their ancestors for generations, a fire burning beneath the endless night sky. The flames danced in the cool evening air. Children sat quietly beside their parents. The elders looked into the glowing embers, remembering stories that had been passed down for countless generations. One elder slowly stood. His face was marked by age, and his hands carried the scars of a lifetime spent surviving the wilderness. He raised his hand toward the stars. Long before any of us were born, he began, our ancestors faced a storm so powerful that it changed the world they knew forever. The children listened in complete silence. They lost their homes. They lost their hunting grounds. They lost everything except each other. And because they stayed together, we are here today. The fire crackled softly as the elder continued. Our greatest weapon was never the spear. It was never the stone axe. It was never even the fire. Our greatest strength has always been the people beside us. The children looked around the circle. Mothers comforting babies. Hunters repairing their spears. Grandparents smiling at the youngest members of the tribe. They finally understood. A tribe was more than a group of people. It was a family. The next morning, the young hunters left before sunrise. Not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to explore lands that no one had ever seen. Their footsteps disappeared beyond the hills, just as their ancestors had done generations earlier. Every new journey carried the same promise. A promise that the human story would never stop growing. Somewhere beyond the next mountain, another river waited to be discovered. Beyond that river, another valley. Beyond that valley, another horizon. And beyond every horizon, Another dream. This endless desire to move forward became the H.